Hello and welcome to my studio. I'm Alexander Evans and today I'm going to be doing some demonstrating for you. But before I do that, I would like to thank Ikebana International Delhi Branch and Nina Verma for inviting me to demonstrate for you today. I was thinking, given the times that we are in, it would be a nice idea to demonstrate a number of things which you can experience in your home. Most of us are in various forms of either lockdown or restricted movement, and so it's good to be able to do things and create things that you can have either close to home or at home. So the first arrangement I thought I would do is in a small bowl, the sort of bowl that you might use for rice or for ramen or noodles of some kind, so something that most people will easily have to hand. Following that, I'll do a table arrangement, and then I'll do an arrangement that would suit a narrow but tall space, because often in our homes we might have a little bit of room on a bench top and space up here, but not much space that way. So hence a tall, narrow arrangement. Anyway, first of all, our bowl arrangement. So today I'm using this lovely bowl made by my friend, a local potter called Susan Hill from Hillgrove Pottery. Yeah, I'll be working with that today. Because of the lovely purples and blues and all those colours in the bowl, I'll be focusing on that in the material. So I have some irises and some ceanothus and some green spider chrysanthemums. So I've started by putting a little bit of pebbles in the bottom of the bowl already, because I want to be able to have my kenzan slightly off centre. So this allows it to sit slightly to one side. And the other thing with a bowl is the material has to stand based on the kenzan only. Because it's not really going to be touching the sides so much, you don't have that extra help from the container in that regard. So it's kind of like doing an arrangement in a suiban. So to make sure that it's not going to fall forwards or to the side, I'm also going to add a second kenzan as a counterweight to the back of my first kenzan. Push that right down so that it's going to keep everything from moving around too much. Now, the next thing I do is, of course, add some water, so that when I cut my flowers, they're going straight into some water. And I just want to go really to the top of the spikes of the kenzan. I can always top it up a little bit more after, but that means I can get in there and work without splashing water around everywhere. So I'm going to begin with my ceanothus. This is actually slightly heavy material. So I want to reduce the weight of it a little bit and reveal this lovely line, because I kind of want to go slightly sideways. So I'm going to take off a few of these in-between parts. And maybe this one also. It seems a bit of a shame because it's so lovely, this material, but it's necessary to sometimes edit our natural materials. So I'm going to put that, cut a little bit in water here. I did pre-prepare a little, so some of my material is already pre-cut, ready to go, just in order to save time. So in any case, I'm going to start that here, holding my kenzan so it doesn't move around on the gravel too much, and tilting it slightly forward and down. Yes. So that's in a nice position. And I'm going to have a little to the front, and then I'm going to add my irises. Ceanothus is a material that we have to be a little bit careful with, because the flowers are compound flowers and they tend to shed a lot of their material. So it's important that we, when we cut them and prepare them, we give them a little bit of a shake to get rid of all of that excess material that might be ready to fall. I don't want to go too high. I'm going to keep this line as my main line because it's such a lovely line. So I just want 3 irises. I'm going to keep them quite short. Typically in Sogetsu Ikebana we have a very specific way in which we use irises, but today this is more of a freestyle arrangement, so I'm just going to be quite unconventional, I suppose, in how I use them. Again, you can see I'm keeping very short with this material. One final. And even though the second and third flowers are very close in height, because the third flower is somewhat more closed, it still feels like a subordinate flower rather than competing. So we're almost there. I just want to fill out the back a little. So that gives us some extension, make sure it feels like a nice three-dimensional feeling arrangement. And one pop of colour is going to be a spider chrysanthemum. So these are just stunning, and as you can see with the purple blue, they really create a vibrant focal point. So again, I want it very short, and that's going to sit just in this centre position here. So I will be cutting most of that length off. Finding the face of the flower. It's become a little bit hidden behind that iris, so I'll just go slightly to the side of where I initially thought. And angling towards the viewer. One other little bit of material I wanted to add, just to break up the texture and solidness of this ceanothus and the iris, because they're so close in colour, is this coastal Westringia, which is called coastal rosemary in Australia, even though I don't think we use it for cooking. But it's quite lovely and delicate, and in a sense gives a sense of freedom and wildness, which is really quite sweet. And that's our arrangement in a bowl. It's quite full feeling, but that's sort of a nice thing when you're experiencing difficult times, to have this sense of abundance, at least in our flowers. This next demonstration is table arrangement demonstration. When we're in the domestic environment, again, sometimes people don't have a big square table, or if they're serving a whole family, there might not be a lot of space left on their table. So I wanted to do an arrangement which is kind of long and narrow, but low, because often people have a longer table rather than a square table. So I have made some boxes, which I made for a different purpose, but they also suit the table purpose. These ones can actually go vertically or they can go horizontally. So in this case, we're using it horizontally. So we're going to have it here, and we're only going to use sort of a minimum amount of material. So for our water source, we've got a small glass container which slides inside, and in there is a kenzan. We might not really need it very much, but it adds some stability. Also, because the glass is textured, our kenzan's not very visible, and it's going inside this box, so it'll sit below the lip of the container so that we won't notice it. So I'll put some water in there before I put it into my wooden box, and it'll just slide in from the end. Don't need a huge amount because I'm not using a huge amount of material in this arrangement. And as you can see, you can't see the kenzan hardly at all. And as soon as we put our floral material in, you won't notice it. So I thought when we're having a table arrangement, we don't want something too tall because then people can't see each other and converse, and it becomes sort of an impediment to having a nice conversation or feeling of connection at the dinner table. So I thought, well, I'll use anthuriums because they've got a nice flexible stem, which I will bend slightly. And the other neat thing about anthuriums is they don't have a strong aroma. So when we're doing an arrangement for a dining table, you don't want to be competing with the smells of the food. And also you don't want such a strong smell that it might upset people or cause them an allergy reaction or any of that sort of thing. So it's important for a table arrangement to use materials that don't have a strong smell. So a little bit of perfume is okay, but you wouldn't say, for instance, use some of the versions of lilies which have a very strong aroma, or strong perfume, I should say, because you don't want to compete with your meal. So that's a nice length, and I'm just going to cut a little bit at the bottom. A second one. So this one we're going to use shorter, and we want it to sort of sit just roughly here. So I don't need all of this length. The trick to bending soft stemmed material is to just ever so slightly crush the fibres on the one side that you're going to bend towards. So don't have to crush them fully, not in the same way as you would with something heavier, but just gently running your finger along the back of the material there. And that will give us a bit of flexibility. If you want a strong fold, you can use your fingernail and just put a little crease, and it'll allow you to bend in that way, which is what I want. And a third flower just sort of to the back, because on a table arrangement it's got to work in 360 degrees because everybody wants to be able to enjoy it together. This will also help continue this line and give us that sense of depth and three-dimensionality. And again, I want some bend, so I've got to very gently work on my material, always supporting where you're doing the manipulating of the material, because if you don't support it, you're more likely to break it. I find this quite meditative. I kind of go off into my own little world while I'm manipulating my material, and I experience through my fingers so that I'm in touch with what's happening with the material, and I'm less likely to cause it a problem. Now I do want a bend. Okay, so that's our principal flowers in place. Now we want to, that's beautiful as it is, but we want a little bit more. So I'm going to add some flax. This is a lovely bronze which picks up on the same colours in the stems of the anthuriums, and we can split it and do various things with it. So I don't want too much of the end. And even though it's flax, I'm going to trim it in water. I want to incorporate this opening in the front of the container. So I'm going to go in here and then create some loops. Now this end of the material is a little dry looking, so I'm going to take that off. Flax can be quite springy. Challenge when working in such a small space is getting things to stay where you want them and to do what you want. So I'm going to put a little split here so that I can feed my material back through, and it will in effect stabilize itself. There we go. Again, I don't want the dried off end, so I'm going to trim that and put something going this way. And now, just to soften this area here, I'm going to add some fluffy material. I'm not quite sure exactly what this is called. I got it from my florist wholesaler just the other day, and I think it's a lovely counterpoint to the sculptural forms that we have here. So I'm going to just add a little bit of this. So there we have a really elegant arrangement for a dinner table. It's not got too much material, so it's easy to get all of the things that you might need for it. And it will sit comfortably and neatly in the center of a long table. This next arrangement is intended for a domestic environment where you might not have a large amount of width in your display space. So you might have height because of a higher ceiling, or you might be able to put it someplace down low but does not have a lot of width. So the idea is that this is a great arrangement for when you're feeling the squeeze. I'm starting with this lovely container, which I've prepared in advance, and I've put a crossbar into the top here because it's got a straight section here, so I could put a crossbar in. Now I'm going to start with just some gomia and some flax. Now I've put one sticky dot here to hold the two together because I want them to work as a pair. So they're just going to sit like that. Now I've also kept them a little bit shorter than I might. We could go taller, but in this case I've decided it would be good for them to still fit in the shot with me. So the feature flower that I want to use is this beautiful King Protea. So it's a lovely dusty pink, an Australian native flower, and I've removed quite a few of these leaves, mostly because they will draw the water away from feeding the flower. And not only that, but the leaves will also deteriorate faster than the flower. So I didn't want to have too many of them. Still, some is nice, but not too many. So I'll just take off one or two more. And then that can go here. All right. So now a second flower I'm going to use will be this one. So I want this to come out here. So I might have to do a little creative bending. So with this, because it's a woody stem, I twist to separate the fibers. And what I want to do is create it so it's going to sit and do this. So hopefully that will work. Well, not exactly as I intended, but I'm not unhappy with the result there. So let's see if I can get that a bit better. As I said, not exactly as intended, but that's the way things are in Ikebana. Sometimes the material just wants to do its own thing, and that's okay. So next I found some amazing kangaroo paw. This is remarkable in that it's got this lovely mauve and soft green colours going on, and I really just thought that was something quite unusual that people may not have had an opportunity to see before, so I thought I'd like to use that today. Now I want this sort of here, so I'm going to trim it a little, and then in water. And a little more. Shorter still. Another one or two. Creates this lovely soft kind of latticey framework for us to enjoy. lucky for me, as I add a bit more material, it's giving me the opportunity to bring this flower higher up, which was where I wanted it. So that makes me quite happy. Don't want quite so much there. And one more shortish. It really is such a remarkable colour. I couldn't help but use it. It was quite striking to me. So the other thing I want to do is echo that beautiful colour just up here, very, very high, almost as if there's nothing else behind here. So I'm just going to trim off most of the side material other than just at the top here, because this will help us draw attention to the verticality of the arrangement. Maybe just one more to add a bit more focus up here. Now, just to fill out a fraction more, a little bit of my favourite, once again, the lovely wax flower, just to create some softness and to blend in with our King Protea. Wax flower is great to use because it's very long lasting and quite woody. It will tend to drop its little leaves every now and then, so you just need to give a little bit of tidying and cleaning around as the arrangement carries on in time. But usually it's pretty good. One or two more small pieces. And then just to pick up on the flax and the Gymea lily leaf that I've got going on there, and to also echo this lovely round form with these round forms, I'm going to create some loops at the bottom to obscure the edge of the container, but also to utilize my Gymea lily. Now this I have run through a pasta machine on an angle, and then held it in front of the hairdryer to open out the fibers. So it creates this lovely lattice and meshy kind of effect. So you can then sort of roll it up and create all kinds of interesting shapes, whatever you might like. And you can just secure it with a simple staple. And so long as your ends are in water, it should keep itself nice and fresh for quite a while. And in any case, Gymea lily will retain its freshness very effectively for quite a long time in any case. And one or two more. That first loop I created with Gymea lily, it also works with flax. So picking up again on all the materials that I've been using throughout, just wanting to carry the theme of my materials throughout the entire arrangement and unify things. The other neat thing about this technique is this material will dry happily and retain its form, and then you can continue to use it. You can paint it, you can do all sorts of things with it, and it's really quite versatile. It's great for giving a sense of volume, and it really, I think, can enhance your work and add to those sort of spaces in your arrangement where you want to fill things out a little without necessarily creating a sense of heaviness. Right, so that is an arrangement that's nice and tall. It's not too wide. It will sit happily in a fairly narrow space, and you can enjoy it for as long as you like. Thank you very much. The next arrangement I'm going to do is a very, very simple arrangement. Sometimes you might only have access to a very small garden, or you might have no garden at all. You might be reliant on what you can grow on a balcony if you live in an apartment. So I wanted to do something which just has one very special flower. In this case, I'm going to use a king protea, but if it could just as easily be a particularly nice rose, or any kind of flower that's a bit showy, but you might just get only one. I'm going to work also in glass. So I've got this lovely container, which is a Costa Boda container. It's quite heavy, but it's got this lovely colour to the inner part of the glass. So I'm going to work in that because I really, really love it. And we'll go from there. So starting with that. The thing about working in glass is you don't want to see a whole bunch of stems. So my first step is always to put something in the container that's going to hide any stems I might have. So in this case, I'm going to use flax again. It's one of my go-to materials. I really, really find it very handy. And I'm going to cut the bottom of it so that it matches the shape at the bottom of the visible part of the container. So I just hold my hand behind it so that you can see. So I want to cut it so it's sort of that curvy shape at the bottom. And that way it should be sympathetic with the container rather than competing with it. And I'm happy with that. So that gives us a leaf, a linear element. And again, as I said, it's just flax, so it's really easy to get. It grows just about everywhere. And it gives us a nice way of keeping any of our stems hidden. Oh, I've filled that a little full, so I'll just take a bit out. Okay, so this is a king protea. It's a beautiful, beautiful flower, very showy, quite large. And I'm just going to work with that one quite low here. I'm going to take off quite a bit of its foliage. I'm not going to take off all, but quite a bit. I feel like it creates a sort of an interesting kind of windmill sort of feeling, which I quite like. So I don't want all that stem because I want it to sit fairly close to the top of the container, so I can cut it really, really rather short. Now I'm cutting it also on the angle to which I want it to rest against the inner wall of the container. Now, even though this is a very small container, it's still important because that gives us the direction the flower is going to go, and allows it to sit how we want. So I can go shorter again. Because that's how I want it, very, very low. So I do like having this long vertical element, but what I might do is split that down, keeping one piece tall, and then just bringing the secondary piece down and through so that we get this nice relationship between our protea and the flax. And that is, well, it's a little straight. So we can fix that. Because while straight is good in some things, we don't want to form a direct cross. So I want to just take this through and make sure it goes on a slight angle. The neat thing about protea is it's sort of got scales almost. The petals form this interlocking pattern, and that gives you an opportunity to cunningly sit things into those spaces where you might not otherwise do so. So that creates a much more dynamic feel. And that's really it. Just one flower, one piece of flax. Something that I find a bit of a challenge and an interesting one is that occasionally we run into materials which has got a very, very fine stem, and accommodating that in an arrangement can be quite challenging because oftentimes our kenzans have the needles spaced sufficiently far apart that a fine stemmed material is difficult to get in place. This is where some kind of support structure comes in very, very handy. Now, we see support structures out there in Ikebana land, and often they're made out of steel, or they're professionally constructed in some way. And this is awesome, but also not cheap and difficult to get hold of sometimes. So I found out there is a way of creating a structure which you can use straws, paper straws, and florist wire, as we often use in Ikebana, and it can produce something that is really worthwhile and useful, and it allows you to have a structure in which to place your materials that have got very fine stems. I'm going to demonstrate with the structure that I've made. I'll just grab it. This is the structure. So you can see it's lots of straight lines, and I've painted this one in a sort of metallic rose gold with a little bit of yellow gold in there to just make it not too monochromatic. And I'm going to incorporate this into an arrangement. Later on, I'll be doing a workshop type demonstration as to how to make these. So stick around. To start with though, I'm going to begin with this triangular container, which is a very standard Sogetsu container that we use. I'm not sure if other schools use the same container, but certainly we do in Sogetsu school. Now this has a Kenzan in it, not that that's going to be particularly helpful to us. See that? There we go, there's a structure sitting right on top of it there, but that's not such an interesting position. That's a much more interesting position. So we're going to go with that. And it gives us opportunities to put our material through these different spaces that we have. Ideally, it's good if it's not touching the ground. So in this case, because it's got wire inside, I can just bend, and it's now not touching the ground. And there we go. So I'm going to start with some spirea, which is a gorgeous material, very delicate and fine, and super duper pretty. It's just got these lovely fine little white flowers. I have heard it referred to as May bush, but I've never referred to it as Maybush. That might be a little old-fashioned thing, or maybe I'm just uninformed. Anyway, so this is spirea, and some water into our container first. Now, it's important that because our structure is made of straws, and paper straws at that it doesn't actually go into the water itself. So it's just sitting around the outside of the container. If you need to secure it in a different way, you can always attach it to another piece of wire or wood that can then go inside the container. But in this case, we want to keep it as much outside as possible. The Kenzan is really only just stopping things from sliding around too much. And I'm going to just be quite random in how I place a lot of these things, because I just want that lovely sense of wildness and freedom that we get with these sort of soft, finely stemmed flowers. And make use of the support that I can have from the structure itself. Another thing I do want is a little bit of green, so I'm going to bring that in over here, and I'm going to put it through this side of the structure, so that will help to make sure it stays in place. This is a bit more fluffy than is needed, so I'm going to trim that, like so. So I'm going to go through there and into the container. And this is the joy of wearing a long necklace, is it likes to enjoy being part of the arrangement. Okay, so I don't need it that long. I'm going to trim the top off. That's better. Okay, so starting to create some interesting things. Spirea will shed a little bit of its petals as you're working. Don't be too worried about that. It will be okay. I've got this lovely long piece which I do want to include over here, although I think these parts are going to need to come off in order to get it into the structure. But I will keep them aside so that I can use them later. A little bit of spirea at this side so that it's unifying the arrangement. And now I want to add some pops of colour. Not too much of this green, although a little bit is quite nice. So I've got this material, which is Ixia, and it does this amazing thing where it changes colour as it gets older, and the longer it's been in bloom, the colour changes. And it becomes this really, really vibrant, amazing material. As you can see though, very fine stem, quite grass-like, so having a structure to support it is very handy. This has all come from the same patch of the garden, so even though it's all very close together, growing as good friends and neighbours, it's all different colours. So this material makes for a really beautifully vibrant kind of arrangement. So really joyful. Which again is in these current times is a nice change perhaps from what we might be experiencing commonly. Again, bring a little pop of colour back down over this side so that it unifies the arrangement and makes it all feel part of the same thing. Maybe one or two more. I just love this colour, it's so stunning. And as I said, this all is growing in the one spot in the garden, so it's quite miraculous how it's all such different colours. I don't think we got different seeds. They all came from the one supplier, and yeah, it's just produced all this amazing variety. So nature is once again surprising and gorgeous and wonderful. And I think I want to put something just in a bit here, so a couple more. So fine stemmed material is just as appropriate to work with in Ikebana as things which are more sturdy, and it's all fine. So you can really find the thing that brings you the most joy and explore ways to work with that. This also will continue to open as it's in your container. So you just pluck off the older flowers and allow the ones as they come closer to the end to continue to open. A little shorter. So there we have a beautiful arrangement. It's got a support structure that uses an unconventional material that's easy to acquire and not too expensive, and is very flexible, and it incorporates beautiful colour and fine stemmed material that you can enjoy, even though the base of that material might not fit into your keen zone easily. So that concludes my demonstrations for you for today. I hope you've enjoyed what I've had to show you, and I look forward to possibly bringing you some further demonstrations or workshops in the future. My thanks once again to Ikebana International Delhi Branch and to Nina Verma for the invitation to come and demonstrate for you today. I hope until next time you stay well, healthy and safe. Thank you.